My mate used me to win his war, then crowned another woman. Wolf shifter's romance. The winter wind swept across the forest of Fenrir like a living thing, sharp and cold, cutting through the pines with a whispering hiss. Snow lay heavy on the branches, thick and silent except for the sound of soft paws on frozen earth. Lyra moved carefully through the trees, her silver pelt blending with the moonlit snow. Even in the dark, her eyes shone bright, reflecting the faint light, alert and wary. She could smell danger before it came, could feel the restless energy of the pack shifting around her. But tonight, she was alone, and her thoughts were heavier than the cold. She remembered the first day she had seen him, Rylan, the prince of the Shifter Kingdom. His presence had been commanding even then, a wolf wrapped in a human body. Every movement precise, every word like steel. He was beauty and danger combined, and even as a child she had felt a strange pull toward him, a mixture of awe and fear. The pack had grown restless. The rival clan from the east, known for their cunning and cruelty, had been gathering strength. Their numbers had swelled, and their attacks had become bolder, striking villages on the border. Lyra had been called to the palace not as a soldier, but as something far rarer. Her silver pelt marked her as special, rare among shifters, and with it came a strange power, one that could sense the enemy's movements, predict danger, and protect those who walked beside her. When Rylan had approached her weeks ago, he had not smiled. He had simply said, "We need you, Lyra! Your gift can save the pack." There had been no warmth, no hesitation, just the expectation of loyalty. And Lyra, young and proud, had agreed. She had trained with him, fought alongside him, and watched as his strategy turned the tide of war. Together they had become a force, unstoppable in battle. The first skirmish had been a test. Lyra had sensed the enemy's approach before anyone else. She had howled a warning, and Rylan's warriors had been ready, their swords flashing in the moonlight, their bodies moving like water. She had fought beside him, her claws striking, her wolf instincts guiding her movements. And in those moments, their eyes had met more than once. A silent understanding passed between them, a bond deeper than words could describe. But the bond had been fragile. Rylan had always kept his distance. His focus was the war, the pack, the crown. And Lyra, despite her growing feelings, had understood that her role was to serve, to fight, to protect. Yet even in the midst of victory, she could feel the pull of something forbidden, something dangerous that throbbed beneath her chest. The battle was over. The enemy had been driven back, their forces scattered across the frozen plains. The pack had cheered. The warriors had raised their weapons in triumph. But Lyra had not joined in the celebration. She had slipped away to the edge of the forest, letting the snow cover her tracks, letting the cold numb the ache inside. She had heard whispers then, whispers that burned hotter than the winter wind. Rylan was betrothing another. A noble woman from the city chosen to strengthen alliances and secure loyalty from distant clans. Lady Selene, graceful and polished with eyes that sparkled like the sun on ice. She had been chosen while Lyra had fought, bled, and risked everything. Lyra's chest tightened. Her wolf howled silently within her, a cry of betrayal and anguish. She had been used, and now she was left standing at the edges, a shadow among shadows, watching the man she had saved place a crown upon the head of another. The palace was alive with music and laughter, the sound harsh in Lyra's ears. Gold and silver glittered in the torchlight, warm against the cold outside, but the warmth could not reach her. She moved closer to the balcony, hidden in the shadows, watching the ceremony unfold. Rylan knelt before Selene, and the crown was set carefully upon her head. His hands had lingered for a moment, and Lyra's stomach had dropped. That touch should have been hers. A spark of anger lit inside her. Her paws dug into the snow, her claws threatening to break through the ice beneath. She wanted to storm the hall, to demand justice, to shout and tear down the walls that had trapped her heart. But she did not move. Not yet. She could not let him see her hurt. She had fought battles with her body and her mind, and she would not lose now to mere heartbreak. Her thoughts were interrupted by a movement across the yard. A figure slipped through the snow with silent grace. Lyra narrowed her eyes. One of Rylan's scouts, perhaps, or a spy from the rival clan? She crouched lower, sensing the danger. But it was not the enemy she feared, it was something closer, something sharper. Ryland turned suddenly, as if he could feel her gaze. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second before he looked away, towards Celine. That brief glance had been enough to make her heart shatter and ignite at the same time. He had seen her. He knew she had been watching. And yet, he had done nothing, had said nothing. The night grew colder. Lyra moved silently back into the forest, letting the snow swallow her footprints. She could hear the celebration fading behind the walls, the echoes of laughter and music a reminder of what she had lost, or perhaps what she had never truly had. Her wolf growled low in her throat, a warning and a comfort. She was not powerless. She had her strength, her speed, her instincts. She had survived battles that others could not, and she would survive this betrayal as well. But survival was not enough. Lyra wanted more than life. She wanted recognition, justice, and perhaps in some quiet corner of her heart a love that was real, unbroken, and true. She clenched her fists, feeling the power thrumming beneath her skin, the magic that had always been hers. And she knew that the story was not over. Not yet. In the days that followed, Lyra trained harder than ever, pushing her body and mind to the limit. She hunted through the forests, ran under the silver moon, and meditated in the caves where the oldest wolves had once whispered secrets of power and prophecy. She would not be a shadow in the light of another. She would claim her place, on the battlefield, in the pack, and perhaps, if fate allowed, in the heart of the one who had used her. Ryland watched her from a distance, his own heart conflicted. He had been raised to lead, to win, to put the pack above all else. Choosing Celine had been a decision of duty, not desire, and yet he could not ignore the pull he felt toward Lyra. She was fire and ice, strength and vulnerability, and she had saved him more times than he could count. But the crown was heavy on his head, and the expectations of the kingdom were heavier still. One night under the pale light of the full moon, Lyra and Ryland met at the edge of the forest. No words were spoken at first. Only the wind, the snow, and the quiet heartbeat of wolves surrounded them. Lyra's eyes were bright, full of hurt and defiance. Ryland's gaze softened for just a moment before the weight of his crown pressed down once more. "You should not be here," he said finally, his voice low and careful. "I belong where I choose," Lyra replied, her tone steady, though her chest ached. "Not where you or anyone else tells me." Ryland's jaw tightened. "I never wanted this arrangement with Celine. You know that." "I know you did what you had to," Lyra said. Her eyes did not leave his.
"But you also chose her over me."
"That choice cannot be undone." For a moment, the forest held its breath. Snow fell silently around them, and the wolves howled in the distance, a chorus of longing and warning. Ryland reached out, but Lyra stepped back, wary of the touch she still craved. "You saved me," he said, voice almost a whisper. "Every battle, every fight. I could not have done it without you." "And yet you crowned another," Lyra said. Her voice was steady, but her wolf growled low, warning him of the fire she carried. Ryland's eyes darkened, torn between duty and desire. He knew the truth. They were mates, bound by fate and power. But he had ignored the call of that bond for what he believed was necessary. Now, as he looked at her, standing fierce and proud beneath the moonlight, he understood the cost of that choice. Lyra turned to leave, her silver pelt glinting in the moonlight. "I will not be your secret," she said. "I will not wait in shadows while you live in light with another. Remember that, Ryland." And with that she vanished into the forest, leaving him alone, the wind, and the weight of what he had done. The war was won, but the battle for hearts had only just begun. The pack, the crown, and the curse of their shared fate loomed ahead, and neither could escape the pull of destiny. The moon hung low over Fenrir, casting silver light across the snow-covered forests. Lyra's paws pressed into the frozen ground as she moved silently between the trees, her silver fur gleaming like liquid light in the darkness. The forest was alive with whispers, wolves calling to each other in distant echoes, wind brushing through pine needles, and the faint hum of magic that only she could sense. Since the night of the coronation, Lyra had not returned to the palace. She had stayed in the shadows, hunting and training, letting the cold wind soothe the ache in her chest. But no amount of snow or distance could erase the memory of Rylan placing the crown on Celine's head. That single moment had fractured her heart, yet it had also sparked something deeper, a fire of determination and a longing that would not be denied. Lyra stopped at the edge of a frozen stream, her reflection shimmering in the ice. She touched her paw to the surface and saw her eyes staring back, bright, alert, and full of power. She was not just any wolf. Her silver fur was rare, a mark of prophecy, and with it came a gift. But a gift, she was learning, could also be a curse. The first sign had come quietly. A whisper in her mind, a tug in her chest, a pull she could not ignore. It was as if the bond between mates, the invisible thread that tied hearts and fates together, was alive within her. Every time she thought of Rylan, her heart raced, her wolf growled, and a strange warmth spread through her body. And yet that same bond also brought pain, a sharp edge of longing that left her hollow. One night, deep in the forest, she confronted the truth. Her grandmother, an elder of the pack, had once warned her of the curse that came with their silver bloodline. "You will know, love Lyra," the old wolf had said years ago, "but it will not come easily. Your heart and your wolf will bind to your mate, and if that bond is betrayed, it will burn you from the inside. Only through strength and understanding can you survive it." Now Lyra understood. The bond was real, and it had been awakened by her connection to Rylan. But he had chosen another, and the pain it caused was more than physical. Her wolf howled silently into the night, a cry of both warning and sorrow. She could feel the threads of her life quivering, a delicate balance between survival and despair. Despite the ache, she refused to give in. She would not allow the bond to control her. She hunted harder, ran faster, and trained with a precision that left even the older wolves in awe. She was building strength, sharpening not just her claws, but her mind. She would not be the shadow waiting in silence while the world moved around her. Yet Rylan's presence lingered, like a storm waiting just beyond the mountains. She could sense him even when he was miles away, his emotions brushing against hers in fleeting, dangerous waves. He was troubled, too. She knew it from the energy that pulsed through the pack, from the tension that thickened the air whenever he passed. And though he kept his distance, she knew he noticed her every move. The palace was a constant reminder of her place, her absence, her betrayal, and her growing power. Celine moved through the halls with grace, her smile a mask that hid ambition and calculation. She was polite but distant, knowing the whispers of the court, aware that Lyra's shadow followed Rylan wherever he went. Celine had everything she should have wanted: the crown, the prince, the favor of the council. But even she could not ignore the tension that lingered in the air, a silent battle for power and heart. Lyra chose to face the palace only when necessary, blending into the shadows, listening, learning, and waiting. She discovered that her gift had more depth than she realized. She could sense not just danger, but truth. Lies shimmered faintly in the air around people, their motives twisting like smoke. She could feel the hidden ambitions of the court, the rival clan spies moving like shadows through the night, and even Rylan's conflicted emotions, pulsing like a heartbeat she could not escape. One evening, as the sky burned with the colors of sunset, Lyra found herself at the edge of the palace gardens. The scent of pine and frost mingled with roses and candle smoke from the windows above. She crouched in the bushes, watching as Rylan spoke with Celine, their movements formal, polite. But she sensed something underneath. Something unspoken. His eyes flicked toward her, just once, and she saw the shadow of regret cross his features. It was enough to stir her wolf. She wanted to run to him, to demand answers, to hear the truth from his lips. But she stayed hidden. She could not risk exposing herself, not yet. Instead, she let the moment burn in her memory, a small ember of hope amidst the cold. That night, Lyra returned to her cave, the one she had claimed as her sanctuary. The walls were lined with ancient markings, symbols of protection and guidance left by the elders of the pack. She sat by the fire, letting the warmth seep into her fur, and allowed herself a moment of reflection. The bond with Rylan was not just a curse. It was a connection, a thread that tied their fates together. And though it hurt, it also gave her strength. She could feel the potential inside her growing, a power that could change the course of the pack's future. But first she had to understand it, master it, and protect it from those who would use it against her. Her thoughts were interrupted by a rustle at the cave entrance. Lyra's ears pricked, her body tensing. A figure stepped into the firelight, a messenger from the palace, breath visible in the cold air. Lyra, the young wolf said, voice shaking. "You are needed. The council demands your presence. There are rumors, threats against the throne." Lyra's heart tightened. She knew this day would come. The war may have ended, but the political games had only begun. She stood, her silver fur catching the firelight, and followed the messenger out into the night. The council chamber was colder than the cave, the stone walls echoing with whispers. Nobles and elders of the pack gathered, their faces painted with suspicion and fear. Celine stood near Rylan, her hands folded neatly, eyes glinting with calm determination, and there, in the center of it all, Rylan waited. His posture was tense, his expression unreadable. "Lyra," he said as she entered, his voice carrying authority and something softer, almost regret. "I did not expect you so soon." "I was summoned," she replied, keeping her voice steady. Her eyes scanned the room, noting every glance, every subtle movement. She could feel the currents of fear and ambition swirling like smoke. "What is this about?" A council elder, old and stern, spoke first. "There are threats to the throne, rumors of a rival clan plotting in the east." "And there are questions about the bond between the prince and the Silver Wolf. It is unusual." Lyra's ears twitched. The bond was her secret, her curse, and her power. She could not reveal it. Not yet. She bowed her head slightly. "I am ready to serve," she said, keeping her tone calm, hiding the storm inside. Rylan's eyes met hers across the room. For a fleeting moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. He wanted to say something, to explain, to confess, but the weight of the crown and the expectations of the court held him back. The council murmured. The words hung in the air like smoke. Lyra could feel the tension tightening around her chest. She was not just a soldier. She was a weapon, a threat, and perhaps the only one who could save the kingdom from the shadows gathering in the east. After the meeting, she slipped out into the gardens once more, the moon high above, silver and unyielding. She could feel Rylan's gaze on her, a pulse she could not deny. Her wolf stirred, restless, aching, longing for what it could not yet have. "You are growing stronger," his voice said from the shadows, low and careful. "More than I expected." Lyra did not turn. "Strength is not enough," she said softly.
I need understanding.
"And I need freedom from what binds me." "You will have both," he replied, almost a whisper. "But not yet. Not while the pack is in danger. Not while the court or the enemy watches." She nodded, her heart heavy, her wolf growling softly in agreement. They could not claim their bond openly, not yet. And perhaps that was what made it burn brighter, fiercer, more impossible to ignore. That night, as Lyra lay beneath the stars, she felt the threads of destiny tighten around her, drawing her toward a future she could not yet see. The bond with Rylan was alive, painful, and beautiful, a fire that refused to die. And somewhere in the shadows, enemies waited, watching for any sign of weakness. Lyra knew one thing with certainty: she would not be broken. Not by betrayal, not by courtly games, not by the weight of a crown. She would rise, stronger and sharper than ever before. And when the time came, she would claim what was hers, not just for herself, but for the pack, for the love that had been stolen from her, and for the destiny that had chosen her. The wind howled through the mountains like a warning, carrying the scent of snow, pine, and something darker beyond the horizon. Lyra ran along the frozen ridges, her silver fur blending with the glinting ice beneath the moonlight. Her paws struck the ground with purpose, her wolf instincts guiding every movement. The forest behind her whispered with secrets, and she could feel the pulse of her own power growing stronger with each step. The coronation had passed, and yet the pain of Ryland's betrayal lingered like a shadow she could not shake. He had chosen Selena to strengthen alliances, to secure the throne, but the bond between them, the one she could feel in her bones, had never been broken. It pulsed with a life of its own, reminding her that power, love, and fate were intertwined in ways she could not yet fully understand. The enemy had not been idle. Rumors of a rival clan gathering in the east had grown louder. Scouts spoke of their numbers swelling, of wolves who could match Lyra and Rylan in strength and cunning. The council had called for her presence again, this time not as a messenger, not as a shadow, but as a force in the coming storm. She would fight! But this time, she would fight on her own terms. As she approached the palace, she saw him first. Rylan. He stood on the balcony looking over the snow-covered grounds, his posture stiff, his gaze far away. The weight of the crown pressed down on him, but beneath it she could see the storm of regret and longing he tried to hide. Her wolf stirred, restless, aching. She wanted to confront him, to demand truth, to hear the words that had been left unspoken for so long. She stepped into the garden, the snow crunching beneath her paws. Rylan turned at the sound, his eyes meeting hers immediately. The moment was heavy, charged with everything they had shared in silence. Battle, loyalty, desire, and betrayal. Lyra, he said, voice low, careful. You shouldn't be here. And yet I am, she replied, stepping closer, her silver fur shimmering in the moonlight. The council calls, the enemy waits, and the pack needs its strongest. I will not hide. He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration and longing flickering across his features. You are stronger than I imagined, and more dangerous. Dangerous? She asked, her lips curving slightly. Perhaps. But I am not yours to command, Rylan. Not anymore. He sighed, his gaze softening for a brief moment before the weight of duty returned. I never intended to crown her. It was necessary. For the pack. For the throne. But you, his words faltered. You are my mate, Lyra. That is no choice I could make, and yet I feel it every day. Her wolf growled low in her throat. The pain of hearing him acknowledge their bond, yet still remain distant, was sharp and consuming. Words are easy, she said, stepping back, eyes flashing. Actions, those are what matter. And your actions placed another on the throne while I bled beside you in battle.
Rylan's jaw tightened.
I was trying to protect you, protect us. Every choice I make carries weight I cannot escape. Lyra shook her head. And yet you chose another woman over the bond that binds us. That cannot be undone. For a long moment they stood in silence, the wind carrying snow between them, the forest around them echoing with distant howls. Their connection pulsed invisibly, a thread that neither could sever, a reminder that fate was not always fair. But the quiet was broken by a shout from the palace gates. The enemy had arrived. The rival clan, more numerous than the scouts had warned, had breached the outskirts of Fenrir. Lyra's wolf snarled, instincts sharpening. She turned to Rylan, her heart pounding. Come, she said, voice firm. We fight together, or the pack dies. He nodded, expression darkening with determination. The crown weighed heavily on him, but he had always been a warrior first. Together they ran toward the gates, Lyra leading the charge with the ferocity of a storm. The battle was chaos and fire under the moonlight. Snow flew, paws struck, claws flashed, and wolves howled in unison, blending with the roar of wind and the clash of steel. Lyra fought with precision, her powers guiding her senses. She could predict attacks before they came, strike with a speed that left enemies reeling, and shield those who ran beside her. Rylan fought close to her, every movement in sync, every glance acknowledging the bond they could not name. In the heat of battle, the tension between them became almost unbearable. Every near miss, every shared moment of danger pulled them closer, whispering of what might be if the world allowed it. A massive wolf from the rival clan lunged at her, eyes glowing with malice. Lyra leapt aside, claws raking the snow, but the wolf's power was strong, dangerous. Rylan dove in, blocking the attack, his own claws slicing through the air. They moved together, a rhythm born of trust, fear, and unspoken longing. When the last enemy fell, the snow around them stained with the evidence of the fight. Lyra stood panting, her fur dusted with frost and ice. Her chest ached, not from exertion alone, but from the storm of emotions swirling inside her. She turned to Rylan, whose breath came in heavy bursts, eyes dark and unreadable. "You risked yourself for me," she said, voice trembling despite her composure. "Again." "I could not let you fall," he said simply, the words raw and true. "Not again. You are mine, Lyra." "Not by choice, but by bond, and it is stronger than anything else in this world." Her wolf growled softly, conflicted. She wanted to run into his arms, to finally let the bond between them guide them. But she could not ignore the past, the betrayal, the crown on Celine's head. "Strong," she said slowly, "but bonds can burn. I feel it in me. Every moment with you is fire and pain." And yet she hesitated, letting the words linger. "I cannot deny it." Rylan stepped closer, the air between them heavy with unspoken emotion. "Then we face it together," he said. "Whatever comes, whatever threat, whatever pain, together." They did not speak again. The night swallowed their words, leaving only the sound of wind, the scent of snow, and the unbreakable pulse of the bond between them. But peace was fleeting. The rival clan's attack had been only the beginning. Rumors whispered through the forest of darker forces awakening, ancient magic stirred by greed and malice. Lyra sensed it in the bones of the earth, in the wind that swept across the mountains, in the shadows that moved where no wolf dared tread. She trained tirelessly in the days that followed, pushing her power to its limits. Her bond with Rylan gave her strength, but it also demanded restraint. Every surge of longing, every pulse of desire risked burning the threads of her life. She had to master it, control it, bend it to her will. Otherwise she would not survive, not as herself and not as the pack's protector. Rylan watched her from a distance, both in awe and worry. He wanted to step forward, to claim what was theirs, to right the wrongs of the coronation. But every glance reminded him of the crown on Celine's head, the duty that bound him, and the danger that surrounded them. He could not risk exposing their bond yet. The tension between them grew with every encounter, every shared glance, every near touch, every silent acknowledgement of what lay beneath the surface. Selene, aware of the unspoken connection, began to plot subtly, weaving influence in the court, testing the limits of loyalty and power. The stakes were higher than ever. One night, under the silver light of a full moon, Lyra ventured into the sacred grove, a place older than the pack itself. She knelt beside the frozen stream, placing her paw on the water and feeling the pulse of magic around her. The threads of her power hummed, connecting her to Rylan in a way both comforting and dangerous. "You feel it too," a voice said from the shadows. Rylan stepped into the moonlight, silent and careful. "I do," she said, not turning. "And it terrifies me." "Terrifies you because it is real," he said, kneeling beside her. "Because no crown, no duty, no fear can sever what is ours." Her wolf growled softly, conflicted between desire and caution. "And yet," she whispered, "it burns. Every time I think of what you chose, what you gave to another, my heart aches, my power flares, and I fear losing control." Rylan reached for her, his fingers brushing against her fur. "Then trust me, trust the bond. Trust us. We will face it together, Lyra. Whatever comes, we survive it together." For a moment, the forest was still. The snowflakes drifted lazily around them. Wolves howled in the distance. And in that moment, Lyra realized that while betrayal had cut her deeply, the fire within her had not been extinguished. She would rise, stronger than ever, and claim her destiny. The dawn broke over Fenrir with a pale, ghostly light casting silver streaks across the frost-covered forests. The kingdom lay tense, each village and castle bracing for the threat that had grown in the east. The rival clan had united with dark magic long thought lost, and whispers told of beasts and shadows that moved with intent, hunting for weakness. Fenrir would not survive if its strongest warriors were not ready. Lyra stood on the cliff above the main valley, her silver fur glowing in the soft light. Her breath formed clouds in the freezing air, and her wolf growled low in her throat. She felt the pulse of power within her, stronger than ever before, honed by battles, loss, and the bond with Rylan that burned brighter with every heartbeat. She was no longer just a fighter. She was a force, a protector, a queen of her own destiny. Behind her, Rylan approached, his dark eyes shadowed with worry. The crown on his head weighed heavily, a constant reminder of duty and expectation. Yet when he looked at her, he saw not just his mate, but a warrior who could stand beside him, who could face any danger, and who would not be broken by betrayal or fear. "We faced them today," he said, his voice low, steady. "All of them. The rival clan, Celine's manipulations, the magic that stirs in the east. We do this together." Lyra turned, meeting his gaze. "Together," she agreed. "The word of vow as much as a promise. But we fight on our terms. No one will control me. No one will use me again." He nodded, a rare softness touching his features. "I swear it. You are mine, not as a weapon, not as a pawn, but as my mate and my equal." The tension between them was electric, the bond undeniable, but there was no time for more than a glance. The enemy had already begun their march, and the wolves of Fenrir readied themselves for war. The battlefield stretched across the valley below, a frozen plain streaked with snow and ice. The rival clan's forces gathered like a dark tide, their numbers larger than the scouts had predicted. Lyra felt the threads of danger, sensing the strongest fighters, predicting their movements, her power weaving through the chaos before it began. Beside her, Rylan readied himself. His posture was commanding, his presence unyielding. But beneath the armor and authority he carried worry for Lyra, for the pack, for the fragile bond they shared in a world that demanded control and conformity. The first clash came with the roar of wolves and the clash of claws. Lyra surged forward, a silver blur against the snow, her strength and speed unmatched. She moved with precision, her wolf instincts guiding every attack, shielding weaker warriors and cutting through the enemy ranks. Each strike carried not just skill but emotion, rage, love, and a fierce determination to protect the future she was building. Rylan fought close by, their movements instinctively in sync. No words were needed. Each glance, each near touch, each shared breath reinforced the bond they could not yet name aloud. They were more than warriors. They were mirrors of each other's strength, fire, and heart. Amidst the chaos, Lyra sensed a darker presence. Shadows moved unnaturally, twisting around the enemy warriors, feeding off fear and anger. The rival clan had been strengthened by magic forbidden and old, the same magic that had watched them in the sacred grove weeks before. Lyra's claws dug into the snow as her power surged, her wolf howling a warning that echoed across the valley. Rylan turned to her, eyes wide. "The magic, Lyra! It's more than we expected!" "I know," she said, teeth bared in a determined snarl. "But we have each other. We can face it." Together they moved into the heart of the enemy. Lyra's power flared, a silver storm that lit the battlefield with shimmering energy, her wolf instincts sharp, unerring. Rylan's strength complemented hers, his presence steady, protective, and unwavering. They cut through the enemy like fire through ice, every strike a declaration of their bond and their resolve. The enemy's leader, a massive wolf shifter with eyes like molten gold, stepped forward, radiating power that twisted the snow and wind around him. He was the one who had watched them from the shadows, waiting for a moment to strike. Lyra's senses flared. She knew that this confrontation would decide not just the battle, but the fate of the kingdom. "You cannot win," the rival leader growled, voice deep and commanding. "Your bond is weak. Your love is distraction. Lyra stepped forward, her silver fur bristling, her claws glowing faintly with her power. "You underestimate what it means to fight for those you love," she said. "Our bond is not weakness, it is strength. And it will burn brighter than your shadows." Rylan joined her side, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "We fight together," he said, his voice low, fierce. "And we will survive." The battle reached its peak. Magic clashed with strength, shadow with silver light, fear with courage. Lyra's power surged, breaking through spells, shattering illusions, and protecting the pack from harm. Ryland's leadership held the warriors together, directing their movements, striking where the enemy was weakest. And through it all, their bond pulsed, a connection that grew stronger, unshakable, and undeniable. Celine, who had watched from a distance, her ambition laid bare, stepped into the chaos, seeking to claim control of the battle, but Lyra intercepted her, silver claws meeting Celine's attempts at manipulation and magic. With every strike, every deflection, Lyra reminded Celine and the world that she was not a pawn, that she was the heart of the pack, and that no crown could silence her. The rival leader lunged at Lyra, a final desperate attempt to break the bond and destroy the pack. Lyra met him head-on, her power flaring like the sun on ice. Rylan leapt beside her, his claws striking true, their movements a perfect mirror of trust and instinct. Together they overpowered the threat, shattering the dark magic, breaking the illusions and sending the enemy fleeing into the east. The battlefield fell silent, the snow settling over the remnants of the clash. Wolves howled in victory, their voices carrying across the valley, echoing into the mountains. Lyra sank to her knees, exhaustion and relief washing over her. Rylan knelt beside her, hands resting gently on her shoulders. "You were incredible," he said softly. He stopped, swallowing the words that had been left unsaid for so long. Lyra looked up at him, her silver eyes bright, fierce, and unyielding. "You don't need to say it," she said. "We survived. Together!"
He took her hand, the warmth of his touch a promise.
No crown, no duty, no fear could ever change that. "You're mine, Lyra, and I am yours." Not by power, not by choice, but by bond, forever. Her wolf growled softly in contentment, and for the first time in weeks, Lyra allowed herself to breathe. She had survived the betrayal, the battles, the manipulation, and the shadows that sought to control her. She had grown stronger, sharper, and more powerful than ever before. And now, beside Rylan, she felt something she had not dared to feel, a sense of belonging, of recognition, of love that was real and unbreakable. The council watched as Lyra and Rylan returned to the palace. Celine's ambitions had been exposed, her manipulations undone by the display of power and unity between the mate bond. The nobles whispered, awed by the silver wolf who had risen from shadow and pain to claim her place at the heart of Fenrir. Rylan took her hand in the great hall, the crown of the kingdom shining in the candlelight. "The throne is ours to protect," he said, voice carrying authority and love. "But so is the bond we share. That will never be broken." Lyra met his gaze, her heart steady, her wolf calm but vigilant. "And I will never be used again," she said firmly. "Not by duty, not by crown, not by fear. I am mine, and we are stronger together." The palace erupted in quiet celebration. Wolves howled beneath the moon, a chorus of loyalty and triumph. And as the night stretched over Fenrir, Lyra and Rylan stood together beneath the silver light, united not just by fate, but by trust, love, and the fires that had tested them both. Yet even in the quiet, a whisper stirred through the forest. Ancient magic, older than any crown, older than any pack, lingered in the shadows, watching, waiting. Lyra felt it in the pulse of her own power, a reminder that even in victory, darkness never fully sleeps. She glanced at Rylan, his hand in hers, eyes steady and strong. "Whatever comes," she said softly, "we will face it together." He nodded, the bond between them humming like a living thing. "Always together!" The moon rose high, silver and eternal, casting its glow over the kingdom of Fenrir. Wolves howled in the distance, The snow sparkled like diamonds, and the bond between Lyra and Rylan burned brighter than any crown, any magic, or any shadow that might dare to challenge them.